Welcome to Carbon's DIY Garage. Thanks for watching this video. If it's your first time here, not only thanks for watching, but please think about checking out the rest of the channel. There's a lot of playlists for other content, not just for this Jeep. Another Jeep, a Dodge Grand Caravan, Subaru, a couple other cars, and other things around the house as well. If you are a returning viewer, I appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed, consider doing so. I'm almost at 5,000 subscribers at the time I'm recording this, and I really appreciate everyone's support of the channel. But into today's content, we are going to be replacing oxygen sensors, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, I am going to do some multimeter work on the oxygen sensors and on the wiring of the Jeep to try to figure out which sensor or sensors I need to replace. But I'm not going to show you that as part of the replacement video. We're going to jump straight to replacing the sensor. And if you want to hang around afterwards, you can see how I diagnosed it. But first, just how to remove and replace an oxygen sensor. The reason we took the tires off because it is a lot easier to get to the oxygen sensors from the wheel well than from underneath. Although you can get to them, at least the wiring harnesses, from underneath. But now we need to take off the fender liner, the inner fender liner, if yours is still installed. I have aftermarket fender flares installed, so I don't have the factory setting necessarily, but there's just a couple of bolts that you need to remove, and then you can wiggle the inner wheel liner out. For my purposes, it looks like I need to use a 10mm socket on 3 bolts to get the inner fender liner out. So to show you from a couple of different angles, this is from underneath, obviously, and we're on the passenger side still. And you can see the downpipe from the exhaust header is right here. This is an oxygen sensor. This is your upstream oxygen sensor because it is upstream of the catalytic converter, which is right here. So that's your upstream sensor, and right here is the electrical plug. And this is, while you can access this with a tool, getting to this is possible from down here, but you've got easier access to the upstream sensor through the wheel well. The downstream sensor is attached to the converter. You can see it right here. And this one you're going to need to be under the Jeep to get to. And then the electrical connector, is right here. And that one's going to be easier to just reach up from underneath as well, although you can probably blindly reach it from the wheel well. So downstream you can do from underneath. Upstream you could do from underneath if you wanted to, although it might be easier to do it from the wheel well. And that's the approach I'm going to show you today. So honestly, I think the hardest part of this whole job is going to be getting the oxygen sensors out. They've been seeing high heat for a long time. This is a 2011. It's 2024, so it's been 13 years. So now that I've got access to both of them, I'm going to shoot them up with some PB Blaster and let them sit and soak. And while they soak, I'm going to go get access to the other side and then also take some measurement readings from the sensors, get all that information while these soak in before I try to remove them. While I am doing the passenger side as the reference for this video, I do want to show you the driver's side. So the driver's side the upstream sensor is pretty easy to access, just like on the passenger side. The downstream sensor, however, is on the outboard side of the converter now, and it's right up against that heat shield, and it's also kind of right above the bracket for the lower control arm, and you also have this frame brace or skid plate arm right underneath it as well. So access is a little bit more challenging with your tools to get the sensor on and off. And then the weird looking thing right now in the center is actually a little thermal booty that is around the harness connector. So to get this apart, I actually had to cut it a little bit so that I could get the connector apart. And so you're going to have to navigate that as well. So the driver's side, the downstream sensor is probably the worst to have to deal with. And that's really why I'm showing you the passenger side, so I can get better videos of the whole thing. So the first step in removing any of the sensors is to disconnect the wire harness from the plug. And that is simply find the kind of the top of the plug, and there's a little push button like you're used to. You push it down and pull the two pieces of the plug apart. If you've never taken them apart before, that might be a little bit stuck together, but just keep wiggling it, working it, and it should come apart. There's no locking tab or anything you need to open up. So I'm going to replace the downstream sensor on the passenger side, show you how to do that. All the other sensors are the same for replacing them. The driver side, both of those are a little bit more challenging, really just because of access, but you can do it. I have faith in you. And then the upstream one on the passenger side is super simple. It's right there through the fender well. So this will be a nice one, kind of medium access, medium level of difficulty. So let's get started. So we've let our PB Blaster soak on that oxygen sensor, and one tool that you are going to need is an oxygen sensor wrench or tool or socket, however you want to call it. It has a slit in it that you can slide over the wires. That'll help you get the oxygen sensor off and then back on. If you don't own one, got a link in the video description, or you can probably rent one from AutoZone, O'Reilly's, that sort of thing. But put your wrench on it very gently, carefully. Try to break that free. If it doesn't come free, you might have to even get out a torch to heat things up, but be careful not to strip it out. Go slow and break it free the best you can. Just to show you how messed up this thing got. Man, I don't know why it's either in there so tight or the metal is so soft that it rounds so easily, but the other passenger side will probably be pretty easy. There's easy access to it, and you can get that big socket on there. I fear for those who have to do the driver's side, because it may be really challenging. So here are the part numbers for the new oxygen sensors. The 23143 is for the downstream sensor on the passenger side. It's also the upstream sensor on the driver's side. And then the 23070 is the upstream on the passenger side and the downstream on the driver's side. So if you're going to do all four, you need 2 of these and 2 of these. And here they are side by side, the new one and the old one. And then you'll notice that these both have black connectors on them. These are the correct part number. The old one, and just go by the color of the connectors. So the downstream side has the black connector, and then the passenger upstream will have a gray connector. And just like on the driver's side, the downstream will have gray, and then the upstream will have black. So make sure that your colors match, old and new. Since I want installation to go in easy peasy, I also bought this thread chaser tool for the oxygen sensor threads, and in the catalytic converter or in the downpipe. I'll leave a link in the video description, but just go ahead and set this in the hole, get it hand started, and then use a ratchet to just run it through, back it back out, try to get some air in there to clean it out, and then you've got some nice clean threads to put your oxygen sensor back in. To install the new oxygen sensor, you remove the plastic cap over the threads. For these sensors that I bought from NTK or NGK, they come with anti-seize on the threads already, and from what I've read, you don't need to add more anti-seize, just leave what they've got installed. If you don't have anti-seize on the threads, you definitely need to put some on. Thread it in gently, and then per the instructions, you would give it a 3/4 of a turn after being finger tight. And the torque spec is 20 foot-pounds or 240 inch-pounds, although I don't know if you're able to give it a torque wrench up in there. But basically, you're just trying to crush the crush washer at the end of the threads. And obviously, if you torque it in there real hard, you're going to make it devastatingly difficult to get it out later. So just torque it down enough so that gases won't leak out. So the only thing left to do then is connect the electrical connector of the sensor back into the wiring of the Jeep. And I'm going to try to show this to you one-handed, so but it goes in pretty easily, and then just make sure it's tucked out of the way. And that is it. This oxygen sensor has fully been replaced and is ready to go. So in the end, I've replaced 3 of the 4 oxygen sensors, both the upstream sensors, driver side and passenger side. Those came off really with no problem, went back in with no problem. It's really easy access through the fender, the wheel well. That one you can easily do. The driver side downstream, I tried. I don't even know how to get tools on it, let alone it seemed like it was going to be just as hard to get off as on the passenger side. So I left that one. I did measurements on all of the sensors, and well, not the downstream driver side, but both upstreams and the downstream passenger side. All of those resistances measured normal, but I replaced them anyway. And we're just going to have to see if that worked out. But anyway, the video shows you how to replace the sensors. Hopefully that part's been useful. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the multimeter aspect and the diagnosis piece, and also what I'm actually struggling with the computer if you want to wait and watch that. But as far as replacement goes, those are the steps. Hopefully that's useful. And if you have a magic trick for doing that driver side downstream oxygen sensor, leave that in the comments. Otherwise, that looks like a real pain if you ever have to do that one, which I might in the future. I don't know. But let's go talk multimeters and measurements. Well, now that I've got the sensors replaced, or at least 3 out of the 4, different video for doing that 4th one, I wanted to explain a little bit quickly on why I actually did the replacement of the sensors, what I was trying to do, and some diagnostics that I ran. First, the issue I'm having is I'm getting 4 check engine codes, P0031, 37, 51, and 57, and they're all tied to the heater circuit having a low reading, a low voltage reading, I think. So I was initially going to use the multimeter to check the voltage going to the heaters. And the way I did that, a few different things, and I'm going to put some infographics in here as well, so you might take some screenshots of those. But I really just try to troubleshoot the whole system to see where there might be errors, because it seemed to be some sort of voltage issue. So first I pulled the connector apart for the sensor and the Jeep harness. It's pretty simple to do for the sensors. And then I just checked to see if any of the 4 on the sensor wires, if they had continuity with the Jeep ground, because they shouldn't, because it's isolated, because it's a 4-wire system. And then I checked the resistance across the 2 white wires, and to see what the resistance would be like for the heater element. And that's kind of an indicator that the heater is working. All of those checked out fine. And again, I'm going to leave some data shots here on the screen, but everything checked out at like 4.8 ohms, both on the old sensors and the new sensors. So I really didn't think it was a heater problem. Could be a wiring problem. So then I checked continuity with the Jeep harness to the ground. There's a ground point on the passenger side of the van that should all be grounded. That's where it's all grounding to. So 3 of the wires you should not have continuity with ground. And then of course the ground wire you would. And that all checked out fine. I disconnected the connectors at the PCM, so up under the hood, and I checked down into the harness from that direction to really just, again, check the continuity. And then, of course, with the connectors connected at the sensor, then you can check resistance across the 2 heater lines, all the way from the PCM area where the harness is, all the way down through the sensor. That all checked out fine. Obviously, if you have a continuity on those PCM wires to ground, you've got a short in the harness somewhere that you need to troubleshoot. But that all worked out fine. Then I reconnected the PCM connectors and checked the voltage on the Jeep harness where the sensor connects. And that's where I actually ran into a problem. You should not be getting any voltage on the ground line, of course, and that proved true. You should get a constant voltage on the signal going into the sensor to activate the sensor. You should have, when the Jeep's running, you should have a variable voltage going down to the heater, but when the Jeep's off, you should have no voltage going down to the heater. But then you should have no voltage or really, really small voltage on the return from the oxygen sensor, because that's kind of your reference. You're basically a ground at the computer, and that's how it's reading the measurements. And I'm having a constant 2.5 volts going from the PCM down the harness into the sensor, and that's not supposed to be happening. And it was consistent across all 4 sensors, or really it's the 4 sensor lines coming out of the PCM, all measure 2.5 volts. So as much as I didn't want to admit it and hoped that throwing cheaper parts at it, $100 for 4 oxygen sensors, way cheaper than a brand new PCM, everything pointed to a PCM issue. But I thought I'd replace the oxygen sensors, see if that would magically fix the problem. It did not. I still have exactly the same problem. So I think a PCM replacement is in my near future. Bonus to you, be another video. But that's a nutshell of how I got to replacing the oxygen sensors. It didn't work out the way I had, kind of fingers crossed, hoped. And so I think PCM is going to be up next. But hopefully this part of the video helps a little bit to talk about all the things I checked. You can do other things, measuring sensor actual performance. There's videos on how to do that. I didn't do that, just real basic stuff from me. And that was more than enough to pinpoint where the problem lies. And it's not with the sensors, it's not with the harness. There's a good ground. The PCM's causing the problem. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have any comments, questions, need a little bit more explanation, drop all that in the comment section. I'll try to help you out. But hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully the video as a whole is helpful. And thanks for watching, and until the next video, y'all take care and have a good one.